Welcome to Mark Moseley Show. Yes, surprise, now on video. The world was calling for it, and I heard the call. Actually, I'm very blessed because we are coming to you now each week. If you want to watch this show on video, you can still listen to it via all of the audio formats, on Spreaker, on Spotify, on iHeart. But you now when you go to YouTube to watch it, or you watch it on The Daily Buzz, which I will tell you will be on Fridays at noon Pacific and Saturday, I believe, at 5 p.m. Pacific. Don't hold me to that one. But I'm very blessed to have access now to this broadcast studio built by the Richard Budman, who is the publisher of our local paper in the Santa Clarita Valley, The Signal. They built this. It's a new digital streaming platform called The Buzz, which I am proud to be a part of, and they are hosting my show every week. So it's exciting. We normally start the show out with a hilarious comedy sketch, but today, unfortunately, we have to start with some breaking news. So let me get into Ron Burgundy mode here. A federal judge has issued a stay on a new President Trump pardon, that of 2 Thanksgiving turkeys. Even though presidents have been pardoning turkeys since John F. Kennedy first spared a bird in 1963, U.S. District Judge Tanya S. Chutkan declared President Trump's pre-Thanksgiving pardon of 2 turkeys, quote, an egregious abuse of executive clemency from an authoritarian president who thinks he can do anything. Harvard Law professor Lawrence Tribe called it the most important separation of powers ruling since Gore versus Bush. Keith Olbermann posted a 29-minute-long rant on TikTok in which he said, Donald John Trump, the twice impeached, once indicted, once convicted, once again elected felon, stood on the White House lawn and committed what may be the single most grotesque, authoritarian, and foul act of his entire criminal presidency. He pardoned a turkey, and in doing so, proved once again that he is, without hyperbole, the worst human being to ever hold the nuclear codes, and a Big Mac in the other hand. Let us be clear, this was not mercy, this was not tradition. This was a dress rehearsal for fascism with feathers. The Reverend Al Sharpton had this to say. Sure, other presidents have pardoned turkeys, but this is Donald Trump, and whenever he does anything, that thing becomes inherently bad because, well, he's Donald Trump, and we need to get him. Also, speaking of turkey, I have it on good authority that this president will only eat the white meat. Trump himself took to Truth Social at 3:14 a.m. this morning, posting, sad, all caps, crooked judge wants to kill our beautiful turkeys. I pardoned them bigly. The best pardon we've ever seen, and we've seen a lot of pardons. And now the deep state wants drumsticks. It's not fair, all caps. As of press time, the Supreme Court has granted emergency review and scheduled oral arguments for 6 a.m. Thanksgiving Day, right after the Macy's parade, right before the football game, and exactly when your uncle starts talking about gas prices. The White House has announced a backup plan. If the turkeys are ultimately executed, Trump will pardon 2 honey-baked hams instead. The president said, quote, they're tremendous hams. Unbelievable, classy, spiral cut. People are saying they're the best hams. And of course, the latest wrinkle in this story is that the so-called seditious 6 have encouraged the chefs at the White House to disobey Trump's clearly illegal order to spare the birds and instead shoot them directly in the head. You laugh. Well, hopefully you're laughing. You laugh, but that's not nearly far enough from the truth as it should be. In fact, to check out this story, a psychotherapist, now this is true, I'm not making any of this up, just to be clear. We have to draw a distinction on this show between what is satire and what is real, because the line is constantly blurred. A psychotherapist recently went on Fox News to discuss TDS, or Trump Derangement Syndrome, and described how many of his patients are suffering from this named mental health condition. Now he is receiving death threats which shows that TDS is not only real, but could be dangerous. His name is Jonathan Alpert, a therapist and author. He wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal in which he discussed how many of his patients cite President Donald Trump as a reason they are experiencing mental health problems. During a prior appearance on Fox News, he said about 75% of his patients suffer from this condition. Now, it's worth mentioning that he is a Manhattan area psychiatrist, so that might make some sense. People are upset with his comments. According to Fox Digital News, Alpert shared with Fox News several messages he'd received via text and email over the past week. Eat blank and die, you racist, fascist piece of blank. Blanking uneducated MAGA scumbag, one message read. Pedophile protector, another said. You're a low-life, worthless, fraudulent piece of blank pedophile who decent people hope is slaughtered and the video is posted to YouTube. It's been intense. Albert reacted to the messages in an interview with Fox News Digital. I expected disagreement, but I didn't expect the level of hostility, especially from people in the mental health field. So is he getting death threats from his contemporaries? From other psychiatrists? That seems to be what he's saying here. What has stood out is the contradiction, he says. Many of the people who speak the most about empathy, tolerance, and inclusion reacted with the least of those things. That reversal tells us something about how emotionally charged politics has become in this country. During his initial appearance with host Harris Faulkner, he was asked about his experiences with patients suffering from TDS. She said, first of all, identify this for us. You're in a session, and what are the signs? You pick up on what? And he said, well, it doesn't take me long to pick up on this. People are obsessed with President Trump. They're fixated. They're hyper-fixated. And they talk about some of the features of this disorder. They can't sleep at night. That's right. I'm hiding under your bed. I'm under your bed, and I'm down here all night. While you're snoring, while you're sleeping, I'm under your bed. They talk about some of the features. They can't sleep. They feel traumatized. They feel restless. I had one patient who said she couldn't enjoy a vacation because every time she saw Trump in the news or on her device, she felt triggered. Well, put your phone down. I don't know it. You're in the Bahamas. Just put your phone down. When I go on vacation, on the rare times that I do go on vacation, the phone has to be, you got to disconnect from the real world. Otherwise, what's the point? This is a profound pathology. I would even go so far as to call it the defining pathology of our time. Alpert further explained that the president is a trigger for many of these people and that to be so obsessed with the president is simply not healthy. The therapist reaffirmed his claim, 3/4 of my patients will present with a lot of these symptoms, and within 5 minutes of seeing me, their hatred for Donald Trump comes up. It's insane. He says, my profession is part of the problem. Therapists, the people who are supposed to be helping people, are actually contributing to dividing the country. If you go back a year ago, there was one psychiatrist who actually told people on national TV, if you don't like the way your friend or relative voted, cut them out of your life. And I've seen this everywhere. I've seen there's a lot of social media posts about this, like cut your family members out of your life. And of course, that's got to hit hard on a day like Thanksgiving, when you're gathered around with family, and some people that you probably don't see the rest of the year. And I think folks got to agree, like, okay, we're going to get together, but we promise we will not talk politics the whole meal. It's the only way to get through it sometimes. When asked about how to treat TDS, Alpert said, it's important to help them separate fact from fiction. So one of the big tasks that I have is to try to educate these patients that dispel a lot of their beliefs. Now, here's where he gets political during his sessions, which I don't know. I don't know about all of this. I don't know how I feel about this. He says, I tell them Trump is not a Nazi. He's not rounding up guys and shipping them off to some faraway land. Can you get political as a psychiatrist? I thought you were supposed to mostly sit there and go, yes, I see. Let me take a note here, jot this down. How does that make you feel? I don't know. I've never been to a psychiatrist, so I don't know what modern therapy even looks like. But Alpert said the other problem is echo chambers. People are on social media, and of course, we know how social media algorithms work. If you like dog videos on Instagram like I do, pretty soon all you're going to see are dog videos. So and that's so if you're clicking on stuff that is misinformation, disinformation, half truths about politics, you're going to get more of that. So and that insulates you from other opinions. And you can see how over time people just start to form this kind of bubble view of the world, and anything that threatens that, they don't want to hear it. But it really shows how dangerous our political climate is becoming in this country. People are legitimately suffering from mental health conditions because they don't like the person in the White House. And I think that's a sign that maybe politics is controlling too much of our lives these days. There's too much going on where that's concerned. Of course, that's how some politicians in Washington want it to be. They want the government in every single area of your life. Anyway, and if you think, well, going back to the little piece of satire at the beginning of the show, if you're thinking there's no judge that would ever rule against Trump pardoning turkeys, check out this story. Most people have heard about the massive Medicare fraud story in Minnesota involving people who happen to be Somali nationals. It is a huge story approaching nearly $1 billion in Medicaid fraud. Well, a component of that, in August, Abdi Fattah Youssef was convicted by a Hennepin County jury after just 4 hours of deliberation. Keep that in mind. Guilty of racketeering, 6 felony theft by swindle charges, a $7.2 million Medicaid scam at his company, Promise Health Services, LLC. This scheme involved many of the components of what you've been hearing about this Somali Medicaid scam. Ghost billing, fake documentation, kickbacks. We've heard stories of like people hiring their relatives and saying, you're a nurse, even though they have no training. He bought lavish spending on luxury cars and upscale goods. Everyone, of course, was expecting a very long prison sentence. And again, the jury found him guilty after just 4 hours of deliberation. So clearly the state had a very strong case against this man. But a few days ago, on November 21st, Judge Sarah West threw out the entire verdict. Her ruling, the evidence didn't eliminate reasonable alternative explanations, such as Youssef being a passive owner unaware of the fraud. So she's making a ruling based on not what the evidence was that the jury heard and that they convicted him on, but this kind of, well, I think this is, if we're going to do that, then I suppose any criminal or any lawyer could play let's call it the Hillary Clinton card, where you know how Hillary Clinton got away with actually breaking federal law for, illegally sending classified information. And James Comey said, well, we don't think that the crime was intentional. So we feel like, well, she didn't set out to break the law. So any criminal, any lawyer could now make a plea like that. And I'm sure it happens all the time. Like, oh, Your Honor, he didn't intend to smash the window of the 7-Eleven with that brick. He didn't understand just how heavy the brick was, Your Honor, and how fragile the glass of the 7-Eleven was, Your Honor. We throw ourselves on the mercy of the court. So the verdict was thrown out. Jurors are outraged, several of them publicly saying the evidence of guilt was blatantly obvious. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is appealing the ruling. Lawmakers are calling for reforms to stop precisely this kind of massive Medicaid abuse that he was involved in. Critics say the decision undermines faith in the entire system and that Hennepin County's political climate is enabling repeat fraud networks that have already bled the state for over $1 billion. And while you're thinking about that, don't forget that on Monday, U.S. District Judge Cameron McGowan Curry dismissed the criminal indictments against the aforementioned James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. His reason, not the evidence against them, but this technicality of, well, the prosecutor. Curry ruled that interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, installed by Pam Bondi in September, was unconstitutionally appointed, turning all actions under her. Sorry, it's a she, not a he. I misgendered her. Bad host. I've misgendered her. It's ma'am. It's ma'am. Turning all actions under her into unlawful exercises of executive power. Really? Now, the fallout here is now James Comey's case may be dead permanently because his 5-year statute of limitations has either expired or is about to. Letitia James is still looking at a 10-year window, meaning that case can be refiled by a lawfully appointed prosecutor. The White House has blasted the ruling as partisan. Some legal experts say the decision is a rare but important pushback against rushed political prosecutions. Well, of course, Trump has to rush. The midterms are coming. And, you know, Trump will most likely, if the Democrats take back, well, not most likely. I mean, I'm not taking that bet that they won't. I'm not. If the Democrats retake the House, it's a lock. Lock it in. Trump will be impeached for a third time. For some reason, I don't know. Pick one. Pick anything. They'll impeach Trump. He won't be removed from office, but at the end of the day, they will impeach Trump. And I think if he gets one more impeachment, he gets a free 6-inch sub from Jersey Mike's. I think it's three impeachments, and you get the free 6-inch sub from Jersey Mike's. He won't be removed from office. And at the end of the day, look, you're just going to get our MVP. You're just going to get J.D. Vance as your president. And hopefully he'll pick a replacement vice president that scares you more than Trump, like Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene or, Donald Trump Jr. That'll keep some Manhattan psychiatric patients awake at night. Donald Trump Jr. as the vice president. Still trying to figure out what Marjorie Taylor Greene is up to. I don't know. Call me a cynic. I've been watching politics in D.C. for so long. I'm thinking surely she has an angle here. I just don't know what it is. I know her polling is she's not doing well, although she does very well in her district, the district that she represents. She's still polling pretty strongly, but overall, and I had heard that she was seeking higher office, like she wanted to either jump to the Senate or run for governor of Georgia. Overall, in the state of Georgia, not as popular. So, and Trump could primary her. I mean, who knows? But it was a weird week. You know, that was a strange one. It was a weird week all around. I'm still trying to figure out why Mamdani was in the Oval Office. That was a funny moment, though. Trump said, "Yeah, go ahead and call me a fascist." I don't know. First of all, I don't know why. The only thing I can think of is keep your enemies close, right? Or keep your enemies closer. But I don't know why Trump had Mamdani in the we got to learn how to pronounce his name, folks. Otherwise, you'll get mail. Mamdani in the Oval Office. But that was very magnanimous of Trump because one of the reporters said, do you consider Trump to be a fascist? And Trump goes, it's okay. You can go ahead and call me a fascist if it makes you feel better. But don't call Mamdani a communist. No. See, you see, now this is typical of the two sets of rules. Because people get mad when you call Mamdani a communist, but Trump is he's such a dictator. He's such a fascist that he'll let you call him a fascist to his face right in the Oval Office. That's how Hitlerian he is. Look out. He's coming for you, and he's going to put you on a train and take you to a death camp. When I come back, who the heck is this Jeffrey Epstein that people keep talking about? Stick around.
Marty and the Doc are back.
Marty, get in the DeLorean!
Doc, where are we headed? The 1950s? The 1880s?
No, Marty. We're going back to the Biden administration.
We're only going back in time a year? Why?
Setting the time travel clock for October 25th, 2024.
But why then, Doc?
Because I hate Trump. And for some crazy reason, the idiots in the Biden DOJ won't leak the Epstein files to the media. What are they waiting for, Marty?
Maybe they're not that bad, Doc.
Don't be naive, Marty. The media can spin anything into political gold. It's our only chance. Kamala sucks. She's about to lose to Trump, but we've got the power to stop it.
Doc, if they could stop Trump, they'd have dumped it all on the internet. You can't run again after this. It doesn't make any sense to hold back, especially after they tried to put him in prison and even kill him. This would be their last card to play.
Marty, you sound like MAGA.
Oh, Doc, I mean...
Get out of my car, Marty.
But, Doc!
Get out of my car!
Back to the Future 4, coming soon to theaters.
Yes, Marty and the Doc are back. That was my son Matt on that one as Marty McFly. Matt will be on this show, I'm hoping, next week in this guest spot that's sitting right across from me, because Matt and I are going to talk about my son Matt is he's a college student. He's studying for his degree in biblical studies at a local university, and he's studying to be a pastor. I'm very proud of my son. So we're going to have him in next week to talk about some things on the spiritual theme on next week's Mark Moseley podcast. Now available on video. Like you really, really needed this. But yes, Marty and the Doc are back, and for the days when if you believed that the world was run by a global cabal of pedophile elites, you were a woo-woo, conspiracy theory, nutjob, wackadoo, Alex Jones wannabe. Remember being mocked for that? Now, the narrative has flipped this past week. Apparently, the world is run by a global cabal of pedophile elites, and Donald Trump is their leader. But those were good times, weren't they? Remember being mocked for thinking Pizzagate was real? Hey, Grok, tell me about Pizzagate. Let's see here. See what Grok got for me. Oh, here we go. And as you know, on this show, Grok sounds like Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. Pizzagate is a debunked far-right conspiracy theory that emerged in late 2016, falsely alleging that high-ranking Democratic Party officials, particularly Hillary Clinton and her campaign chairman, John Podesta, were running a child sex trafficking ring out of the basement of Comet Ping Pong, a Washington, D.C. pizzeria. The theory claimed that leaked emails from the Podesta hack published by WikiLeaks contained coded references and human trafficking, using terms like pizza, pasta, and cheese as euphemisms. Remember that? And it was, of course, discredited. The big talking point last week seemed to be from the Democrats that the Epstein emails that, did get released prove that Trump knew of misconduct. Okay. Who didn't know? No, seriously, is this a different Jeffrey Epstein than the one everyone in the world knew was trafficking underage girls? Is this a different guy than the one former President Bill Clinton knew was trafficking underage girls? I mean, is this a different Jeffrey Epstein than the guy that had a picture of me in a blue dress in his Manhattan penthouse? Different guy? I don't know. What's the gotcha? What was the gotcha here? Is this the same Jeffrey Epstein that got that sweetheart prosecution deal back in Florida back in the late 90s, early 2000s? 25 years ago when everybody knew what he was doing. The fix was in back then. Now, in those emails that came out last week, the victim, the email said, victim spent hours at my house with him. Now, the victim, we know because it's the same email had been released before. The unredacted version of the email that the Democrats made a big deal about last week, the unredacted version of that email that actually had Virginia Guthrie's name in the email was released a long time ago. So I think what happened this time around was the conspiracy against Trump. They must have re-redacted it because the person's name was hidden, and I think that was done to make it vague, like, oh, it could have been someone else. But everybody agrees, and the media has come full circle on this and said, no, it's the same email. This is a much ado about nothing. But they sure made a lot about it. The victim was Virginia Guthrie. Now, the email was from 2011. In 2011, Guthrie was 27 years old, which means if she was 27 in 2011, she was just turning 17 when she was recruited in 2000. Because remember, she worked at Mar-a-Lago and Ghislaine Maxwell came through with Jeffrey Epstein and they snatched her away and she became one of Jeffrey Epstein's girls. This was back when Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago back in the day. So she turned 18 the next August. So the point that I'm trying to get at here is, what year was it that in the email she spent hours with Donald Trump? How old was she? Well, the email doesn't say. So the window for Trump to have had sex with Virginia Guthrie when she was under the age of 18 is only about a year. So that's not been established. There's no timeline on the email as to when he spent hours at the house with her. She wasn't underage when Trump never did anything inappropriate to her, according to statements that she's made repeatedly. So so remember, the wording of the email, spent hours at my home with victim. You can draw the conclusion that they were doing, they were behaving inappropriately together, but the email doesn't specifically say that. See, it's all a lot of smoke and mirrors here. And look, I'm not saying, I will never say, because I'm not a hack. I am not one of these people that's like, Donald Trump can do no wrong. He's a saint. I'm not one of those people. I'm not saying Donald Trump is not a serial philanderer for which he should be ashamed. I'm not a guy that says, Donald Trump didn't cheat on his smoking hot wives. He did. He is. But so was Clinton, so was Kennedy, so was Johnson, so was Eisenhower and FDR and Harding and Cleveland and Jefferson. And those are just the ones that we know about. Those are just the ones that it's been established publicly. So, and I know that's whataboutism. Whataboutism, Mark? We're talking about Trump. You're not allowed to bring up any other points. Stick to the topic. It's about Trump. I know. But again, Trump is not the only serial philanderer to ever have sat behind the Resolute desk. Insert Bill Clinton joke here. But yeah, it's just never been established that he's a pedophile. And that you're going to have to prove. Just repeatedly posting that he is and reposting memes on social media, that's not going to make it come true. He's going to have to actually factually be proven to be that in the upcoming third Trump impeachment trial in 2027. It's coming. But as far as Trump being in the Epstein files, what did I say on my show weeks ago? I said two things. AI videos are so real now that, believe it or not, I'm not here right now. This is all AI generated. No, you don't know. It could be, right? I could be completely AI generated, and most of you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That's how good it is. Now, I know we've all seen the cute little bunny doing Michael Jackson, Billie Jean moves on Instagram. That's not what I'm talking about. The kind of stuff that fools my 80-something-year-old mom. She's like, look, Mark, look at this bunny. He's doing Michael Jackson. I'm like, Mom, that's AI. You know that, right? Not that level of AI. I'm talking about the level of AI that is, that is fooling people, like the bear bouncing on the trampoline in the backyard at night. That fools a lot of people. And I've seen some now that are so incredible and so real that very soon we're just not going to know what's real and what's not. So you have to imagine that the AI technology available, if that's what the general population has access to, the AI technology that's available to the CIA and the NSA has got to be 20 years more sophisticated than what you and I can see. And that's just the way it is. Remember the movie Enemy of the State in 1999 with Will Smith and the late great Gene Hackman. And I always refer to that as being an example of declassified technology that the government's had for decades that now is in such common use that, like, we can show it in a movie. But you have to know that in the 70s, they had the technology that you saw in that movie where you could look down on a guy running down the street from a satellite and track him through a store and have heat signature recognition and all of that stuff. So the government, the AI that the government has, and I hope this doesn't make me sound like a conspiracy theorist to any of you, but it's just common sense. Whatever we've got access, everybody remembers the videos that popped up on YouTube a couple of years ago of the invisibility suit that there's a piece of footage and all of a sudden this soldier wearing this outfit just materializes in the middle of this video. So the government has stuff that they develop that they hold on to for a while before the technology becomes available to everybody else. But so I say all that to say, I'm sure Trump is in the Epstein files. But you'll never be able to convince millions of us that it's real. Just like if a video surfaced tomorrow of 25-year-old Kamala Harris giving somebody a lap dance, millions would believe it, millions wouldn't believe it because everybody loves their own team. And the other thing that I said, and this is absolutely coming true, this is absolutely coming true. I said this weeks ago. The only name that matters in everything that's being released about Epstein at this point, the only name that matters is the name Donald Trump. And if you watch the media last couple of weeks, you would think the only person who ever talked to Jeffrey Epstein was Donald Trump. Never mind anyone else who's named in any of the Epstein files, all the celebrities, all the other political figures, all the global figures, Prince Andrew. The only thing that matters to the left is Donald Trump. Everyone else will get to skate because they're so obsessed with Trump that, they're never going to mention Kevin Spacey or Chris Tucker or one that surprised me, Maria Shriver, apparently had been to Epstein Island because they're obsessed with getting Trump. And they have been ever since he came down that escalator and dared to run for president as a Republican.
The holidays are here, In fact, it's already Thanksgiving, and you don't have your Christmas lights up. What's wrong with you? The guy next door had his whole house decorated at 12:01 on November 1st. Don't you feel like a grinchy, scroogey loser? Now, you could go and buy a few puny strands of lights and wrap them around the trunk of that palm tree in the front yard, but that's lamer than Tiny Tim. Lucky for you, the fine people at Holiday Time Decor announced their new 1 million bulb strand of lights. Not 100 lights, not 500, no, 1 million bulbs on a 270,000-foot cord. That's over 50 miles of lights, enough to cover every square inch of your house, every tree in your yard, and the 2 cars in your driveway. Take that, overzealous neighbor. Now be the most lit house on your block. The house the astronauts on the International Space Station can see from orbit.
Mission Control, what's that we're seeing down there?
With a new 1 million bulb strand. Order now and get delivery by flatbed truck within days. Yes, 1 strand and you're done. From the people at Holiday Time Decor.
Welcome back to Mark Moseley Show. Don't forget to follow me on all social media at Mark Moseley, Moseley. Moseley. There's 2 E's in there. On TikTok. No, I'm not on TikTok, am I? Why did I say TikTok? I am deliberately not on TikTok because I don't want to learn how to ingest household cleaning products. I am on X, though. I am on Instagram, I am on Facebook, and I am on YouTube on all platforms at Mark Moseley. Of course, you will be able to watch this video version of the podcast courtesy of The Daily Buzz on YouTube, as well as on The Daily Buzz, which is buzzscv.com, buzzscv, which is Santa Clarita Valley, the beautiful, Pollyannic, I can't believe it's real, slice of heaven right in the middle of the California hellscape that is the Santa Clarita Valley. We love it. That's once again, thank you to The Signal for putting this beautiful studio together just for me. No, they didn't do it just for me. It's a multi-use studio. It's the nice part of the show now because now I have to redeem myself after talking politics for the last half hour. It's time for some good news, and then we'll wrap up with our doofus of the week. First of all, some good news. We love the good news on this show. On a crisp November morning, recently, here in 2025, Roy Herman from Portland, Oregon, crossed the finish line of the New York City Marathon, and he did it in only 10 hours, 17 minutes, and 32 seconds. If you know anything about marathons, that's a long time. Of course, if I ran it, it would have taken me probably twice that long. That's how much I'm out of shape. But Roy started running about 15 years ago because his doctor said his heart was getting lazy. Now, he'd never run more than a 5K until about 4 years ago when he decided, you know what? I'm going to push myself harder. The bucket list needs a bigger bucket. And since then, he has quietly completed 27 marathons, always wearing his same faded 1980s era Walkman, blasting classic music from Johnny Cash. Thousands of runners slowed down just to high-five him along the course. In Queens, an entire high school marching band played the Johnny Cash song Ring of Fire as Roy Herman shuffled by. On the final stretch in Central Park, strangers formed a tunnel of cheering arms that carried him the last 400 meters. When he crossed the finish line, Roy raised both arms, looked at TV cameras and said, "I'm not fast, but I'm stubborn, and today stubborn won." He finished dead last in the marathon. And the entire marathon celebrated him like he was first. The New York City Marathon even gave him bib number, you know, the number that you get, bib number 104, which was a little wink from the race director. You see, Roy Herman is 104 years old. Now, you have no excuse, and I have no excuse. He only started running, if you're doing the math, he only started running about 15 years ago when he was 89. And yes, he's already signed up for next year's New York City Marathon. Crazy. Love that story. And now we'll flip it. Now we go from hero to zero. It's time for the doofus of the week. And this week I have a double dose of doofus because I couldn't decide which of these I like the best. So I'll bring you both. You're a big stupid doofus. No, you are. No, you. In Clearwater, Florida, a would-be robber walked into the Bank of America wearing a disguise that he thought was sure to help him commit the perfect crime. But the disguise didn't work out so well. Tellers spotted him right away, and they pushed the alarm to call the police, shocked that his outfit didn't work as he had hoped, as he had envisioned. The man took off running. He was caught and arrested about 20 minutes later. The disguise he was wearing was a lime green full-body morph suit, the kind that people use for green screen effects. He was actually under the impression that wearing this full-body lime green morph suit would make him undetectable to bank security cameras. Somebody's watched a little too many behind-the-scenes making of Marvel movies videos. When police caught up to him at a nearby park, he was still under the impression that he was somehow invisible. He was spotted trying to blend into some foliage. And in Colorado Springs, a man who had just robbed a liquor store at gunpoint ran out to the front of the store, jumped into the back seat of what he thought was his getaway car, and screamed, "Go, go, go!" The two men in the front seat of the car turned around, looked at the man in shock, and then said, "Okay." And they went and drove him straight to the nearest police station. He had jumped into the wrong car and said, "Go, go, go." In fact, the worst possible car that you could jump into and scream, "Go, go, go." It was an unmarked police cruiser that was parked in front of the liquor store. Well, that's the show for today. Thanks for listening and or watching. And we'll be back next week with another mostly political, somewhat humorous look at the world. Until then, may God bless you with health, joy, and wisdom.